Alright, so hey guys, this is Dog from the 6 Plus Discord group doing a review session of a player named I Bring You Peace who's playing NL10. So hopefully he'll make a lot of mistakes so we will have something to talk about. Because if he's gonna be playing great, this is gonna be a pretty boring video. And if you would like me to do a session with you, feel free to contact me on the Discord server. So the first thing you can do when you're playing these tables is look at the stats, and you can see some guys here like up here who has pretty high VPIP. I have a slightly different HUD, so maybe I'm reading it incorrectly. So you want to see guys who are maybe not so good and mark them. So if someone's playing 71 VPIP, it means you can put some pressure on him and either get folds pre-flop or maybe outplay him post-flop and try to maybe isolate them and win some money that way. So 6-7 of course is it's not a great hand, so we're just going to be checking it down. And I think he ends up calling here, which seems like a normal call because you have a straight and just someone's bets into you. But as you can see here, there's 5 people in the pot and people don't really bluff this way. And if they're not bluffing, then either you're chopping or you're behind all the full houses who may be slow played, and even like 7-10 or Queen Jack beats you. So even though it might seem like a standard call, but I would really just fold this here, especially because you have guys behind you who could raise you. So it seems like a cooler, and it is a little bit, but that's actually a spot where in 6 plus you can lay it down. But of course, that's not like not a big mistake that's gonna cost you a lot of money. Just a small mistake. Alright, so ace jack on the button against a big ISO is a clear fold here. Yeah, we can bet this flop. You can check it. It's both options are fine. And once we get called, the turn is pretty interesting because it seems like a really bad card for us because it completes like Queen Jack and then 7 makes a straight. But he could have a Queen Jack. But if you think about how early he limped, he shouldn't have too many 7x. So that's not really that bad of a card as it might seem. But still, checking down is the only option. I would usually jam this pre-flop so I wouldn't have a spot like this where it's not that easy to play this hand post-flop. That's why I would be a bit more aggressive pre-flop. Here is a pretty disgusting spot, but against 2 all-ins, I think it's all right to fold, because even if someone has like 8-10, a draw or like Jack-10, you are essentially flipping against those hands, and if someone has a set, you're basically dead. So a good lay down, but you could have avoided that by jamming pre-flop. And if you jam pre-flop, then you pick up a lot of chips. It's not like in Holdem where you only win the big blind. Everyone puts in ante at the beginning of the hand, so every pre-flop pot you win is much bigger, so it pays more to be aggressive in this game. So King Queen suited is one of those tricky hands which looks really nice, but against the big ISO I would just fold it pre-flop, because when people raise that big pre-flop, it's usually with like really strong hands. So aces, kings, queens, ace, king, ace, queen, and all of those hands are hands that do really, really well against your hand. So I would much rather call that big ISO with like an 8-9 suited type of hand than king queen suited, because yeah, it's a good hand, but against a big pre-flop ISO, it's much weaker, especially if you're out of position. But so far, you are not making any huge mistakes, just some small missteps. But I would guess that by your style of play and your pre-flop ranges and everything, you're probably a winning player. But by avoiding those small leaks, you could definitely increase your win rate. So we limp pocket kings, which is of course good, especially since the guy on the button is seems pretty aggressive from his stats. It's a pretty terrible flop for us, and it's a good fold here. Pretty ambitious bluff from the 9-7 offsuit hand, so you can definitely mark that guy as aggressive. He's probably a bit out of line. If he tries to bluff in spots like these, he's probably gonna be aggressive, and a bit too aggressive. So let's skip ahead to some interesting spot like here. So pocket kings, of course. We want to put more money in because we have probably the best hand. Alright, so we have a three-handed table and a four-handed. So yeah, of course we got a call here and probably check call here, but against that big jam, even though he's only representing quads, but people don't bluff that way, so it's a good fold. You could also lead yourself or check call with the 9-10 if you have a gut shot and backdoor flush. That's a really decent hand, so you could have continued. Here I would bet on a turn after two checks, because with the ace jack you have a second pair, and this guy seems to be playing pretty obvious. He's quickly checking, indicating he has nothing, so I would have bet the turn. So 10-8 off gives us an open ender, so I would have probably called at least one street. Our outs could be dead, but you don't really want to fold open enders in 6+. You could have called and see what happens. And so with pocket aces, we make a raise on the button and against the min bet. course we have to raise, and I think calling is a pretty big mistake, because when someone min bets into you, that's essentially the same as checking. So I mean, would you raise aces here and check back on the flop? I think not. It doesn't make any sense. You almost always have the best hand here, so you have a big range advantage here. So you want to put the money in. You also have the backdoor not flush draw, so you should have made a pretty big raise on the flop. And here against another min bet, it's good to see that you start raising, but the pot should be bigger now. And also on the river, I mean, it seems like a scary card because it completes a straight, but we are beating all the two pairs. So like if he has Jack 10, Queen 10, we're ahead of those. And it completes a straight, but I mean, he should have Ace King or like 8 9, shouldn't bet call raise. So you could have made a small value, but at the end, it seems like a scary board, but it really isn't. And the pot should have been a lot bigger. You had a good hand, but you lost a little bit of value. So another min bet by a different player. Again, you can raise, you can call. Maybe raising is a bit ambitious, but you definitely don't want to fold. I mean, you're getting crazy pot odds, and you only need to win it like 1 out of 10 times to make the call against a min bet possible. I mean, profitable. So folding there is a pretty big mistake. So for some reason, you seem to play really passive against those min bets, which, I mean, you should do the opposite. Min bets are saying basically, I'm checking, but I'm pretending to bet, so that you would leave me alone. So you want to put some pressure against the min bets, especially if you have some equity, because that's a sign of weakness. And of course, like in 6+, when someone min bets into you and you raise and you win, you don't just win the one big blind, you win all the blinds in the middle. And you should have probably bet on the turn on the right. I mean, you had a full house, so bet for value. Here, I mean, you're probably never ahead. After a check raise and river, you do have the top full house, but again, like, do people bluff that way? Like, what would people bluff in that way? It's easy for me to say that you should fold because I saw that he had quads, but generally in that spot, like, if people don't bluff that way, then it doesn't really matter that you have a decent hand. So with Queen 10 suited, you can limp, you can raise. Both options are fine. And here you should probably always continue, because you shouldn't be up against too many eights. Like Jack 8 offsuit isn't gonna call an ISO. So, and I like your sizing. Small sizing is good enough to take it down. So pretty interesting spot with 4 players and a top pair, and Might seem passive here, but I think folding queen 10 is fine, because even if you have the best hand, even if you're up against draw, you're still gonna be in a tough spot to play post flop. So folding's fine. So this is also a pretty awkward spot. Like, you probably have the best hand, but you don't really want, with the ace 10 hand, you don't want any raises or floats. So a good big sizing on the flop, I think, is good. So well played there. It's a spot where you probably have the best hand, but you also want to win the hand straight away on the flop and not see any hands that complete straight or flush. So you should play those aggressively. So Jack Queen offsuit here might seem tempting to call for a lot of people, because it's like, oh, connected and we're in position and pretty deep. So maybe we can flop a straight, but I think it's a good fold, because their range is gonna dominate you. When people raise from the first position, that's usually a very strong hand. So like aces, kings, queens, so on. So again, your hand, queen jack offsuit, is gonna be doing pretty badly against those, and you want to call with hands that flop more of the lower flop. So like 10-9, 8-9. Here against a smaller raise with Jack 10, which is hand plays better against the ace king ace queen, I would have called, because you are gonna hit those smaller flops, and also it's not as big of a raise as 9. So, and it's also like a good hand to outflop. It's a hand you're most likely to flop a straight with. So you could have called 6 big blinds there. So king 10 is a call. It's again a bit too passive to fold it there, but it's not like a major mistake. So this guy seems pretty active. He's raising, he's ISOing, and even though he's active, so you want to limp raise against these guys more often, but king queen offsuit isn't the hand to do it with. And even though he's active, we have to fold, because again, we don't do well against his range. But you definitely want to take a note that he's all right. No, it's good that you did take a note, because if someone's playing so aggressively, you want to play a different style against them. So on a flop like this, it's a pretty good flop for jacks. So jamming is the only option. You don't want to like bet it smaller and play against calls. So the pot was already big, so it's good jam, yeah. It's pretty tempting to call, but because you're in early position, you have to fold the 9-10. If you were like on the button, then you can of course call or even raise, but since you have guys talking and talking still behind you who could raise, you had to fold the 9-10 off, yeah. So definitely not the best flop or king queen of diamonds, so we will be folding. So here is like another one of those tough spots, like you have a decent hand but it's like against 5 people and it's tough to play turns. So you can check, you can bet on the flop, but here on the turn when everyone checks the flop and no straights complete, you probably have the best hand, so you probably wanted to bet the turn and take it down, and probably bet pretty big to deny equity for draws and everything. So I think you lost a little bit of value. You could have taken it down. So again, like another spot where it's not like a major mistake not to bet it, but where you lost some chips because you played a bit too passive and you let the other guys catch up and catch something on the river. So here with ace 8, it's not a super strong hand, but we have to bet it on the flop, I think. Here if you just check it, you're basically giving up. So yeah, again, another spot where you should have been more active on the flop, and you don't have to call a raise or you don't have to double barrel if you get called, but I do think you lose value if you just check down top pair when there's, I think, a decent chance that all these guys could have folded if you had just shown some aggression. And here again, like, you seem to be happy to check it down, but once the ace hits on the turn, yeah, you again, like, you have the second pair, and against all checks, you probably have the best hand, so you definitely wanted to bet the turn with the king queen. All right, so that's the end of the video. So so far, I mean, I have to say you weren't making any big mistakes, so this wasn't the most entertaining video, and we didn't have too many like interesting post flop spots come up. But the biggest mistakes were, as I said, you're a bit too passive, and you're probably a winning player, but you could have a much better win rate if you just use those small spots where you could have taken the chips down. And as I said, if you take the flop down, um, the pot is always bigger in 6+ because of the ante. So alright, so thanks for watching, and see you on the Discord group. Bye.